talk about happiness, um, which I think will helpfully. I've learned a lot of things preparing this talk, by the way, so I'm gonna check it out with you. So, happiness, what it is, and how to get more of it. And this is the valedictory address, the sort of thanks address at the end of the presidency year, which for me has been a wonderful and fulfilling experience and brought a lot of happiness. So I've got a few bits of interaction here at different times today. Are we happy to start? So I have questions that include things like, what makes you happy? What is happiness? Can we measure it? How can we get more of it? And even, is it possible, even appropriate, to try to answer those questions? So what makes you happy in this room? This is a very general question, isn't it? It's a bit of audience interaction here. What things make you happy? Go on, you must have something in your life that, yeah.
My family.
Your family. So family is a good thing, yeah. Anything else? Music, predictable there, but I think music is certainly a part of a lot of people's lives. For some strange reason, it seems to be very fulfilling. Your garden, yeah. There's a chance to escape into the garden and yeah, it's in quite small but beautiful, right? That's good. So it's therapeutic outdoors. Wonderful. We've got the garden, families, music. Anything else? Sorry? I didn't. I heard two people speak. Sunshine, yes, when we can get it. Brilliant, isn't it? Certainly mood boosting, sunshine, good for the skin, good for the brain. Yeah, Robert. In that state of mind, that is the I think we have to decide. You've obviously read my talk already. Attitude of mind. Thank you. Yes. I thought you were a surgeon by background. Thank you so much. Yes. Attitude of mind. Yes, Sarah. Friends. Yes. Relationships and friends. Yes. Very few people on their deathbed say they wish they'd spent more time at the office, although there was one person I read about once. Yeah, John.
Golf.
Golf.
Sometimes.
When you're winning.
Yeah.
When you're winning. It's a bit like me with tennis, really. I hate it and I love it at the same time. Yeah. That can be can bring happiness or can bring other emotions, depending on how brilliant. A season ticket. Well, I hope I've covered. Anybody else want to voice what makes them happy? Is that available tonight, Stuart? Do we have? It's £14.99 maybe for a good retailer around here. That's brilliant. I did put a slide together where I tried to put as many pictures on as possible, then discovered that my file would collapse unless I trimmed them. So there is football in the corner there. Happy doctors, yes, I've met a couple of those over the years. Children, there's wine, the bottom left of the picture there. From a few years ago. I think you're even, not in the picture, Stuart, but you're almost in the picture. Oh, yeah. Family contact. What do we have? Coronation Street. I put that one in for Susan, actually, because so satisfying programs on TV. Christmas time, that's actually a picture of the tree here, really. So Christmas is both a stressful time for some people and less stressful for others. And the outdoors, exercise, gardening, and even walking, as you can see from a group of us there. I think the walk leader's just been cut off on one side there, Greg. So a lot of things do make us happy and for good reasons. And I want to ask you not only what makes you happy, but if we were to create a scale of life satisfaction, and this is a really subjective thing, on a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 was as happy or as satisfied with life as you could be, and 1 was as unsatisfied. I'm going to let you think. I'm not going to ask you individually, but where would you put yourself on that scale over the past, say, two or 3 weeks? So have a think about that. I'm going to show you what the mean figure is for the population in the UK in a second. So just have a think about where you put yourself. Would you put it below 5, above 5? Anyway, so can everybody guess what the mean figure is across lots of studies? 7? Good guess. Good guess. Some studies say 7. I think this 2021, maybe they just had a bit of a depressing time with COVID, but this is the I saw 7.2, 7.3 somewhere. This UK mean in the last Office of National Statistics was 6.4, which is probably a little bit lower overall. The other question I've got to ask is, what happens to happiness as we age? What does it look like? I'm going to show you a graph in a second. So where does the happiness go? Increases. Yes. So the poorer your eyesight, the happier you get. There's obviously a link between poor eyesight and happiness. So maybe it's just a correlation rather than the cause. Yeah. So in fact, it's like that. So that subjective scale of 1 to 10, as you can see, actually, it's not bad when you're a teenager, but then you get into your 20s and 30s and so on. You have lots of demands upon your life. But for some reason, around about middle age, it then starts to increase overall towards old age. In fact, on this particular graph, it seems to be going up all the way into your 80s, really. There's many reasons for that, isn't there, really, why people would be happy.
I'm going to be a
Just grateful for every day that passes. Yeah, that's probably a rally. You learn why you should be happy, and everything's relative. So that's the surprising news. So this stereotype of old age as being a time of general misery is not true. I've managed to remove that screen sharing thing, haven't I, by moving the mouse. Brilliant. Thank you. I'll remember that next time I'm doing a lecture. What is happiness? I'm simplifying things, aren't I, really? But happiness seems to be two things. It's a state of subjective well-being and contentment. So it's all about mental health. But it also is divided up into two parts, short and long term, because it has various synonyms. So we have, first of all, happiness meaning positive emotions, feelings of pleasure or joy in the moment, hedonia or hedonism. But also, I thought I'd put that picture up on there, really, but I don't know why I put that one up. I never watched the program, obviously, myself. And then life satisfaction, a sense of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment. Eudaimonia, it says here. That's the official term for it. That's a picture of Epictetus, who was a Stoic philosopher from Greece, who used to propose what makes people happy and did divide it into these two major categories called short-term pleasure and long-term satisfaction and meaning. Both things are true for happiness. The other thing to say about happiness is actually good for you if that's not a tautology. You get better physical health, better immune system responses, and a longer life. Happiness leads to longer life, and longer life leads to happiness. And there are various other ways you might express the word happiness, and I've just put a few of those on there. So when I'm talking about happiness today, and I've used the word a lot in these slides, I am talking about this broad range of subjective well-being, positive well-being. So I'm going to start with the big picture here. Now, I know Bob Adams has read this book as well, but there's a guy called Yuval Noah Harari who's written this book called Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. It is a great sort of anthropological description of things. So I'm going to try and go big now. I know we've had talks about the Big Bang here in the past, so let me just start with this. So first of all, and this is going back quite a while, so the universe was created 13.8 thousand billion years ago, so 1,000 million or a bit 13 billion years ago. And we think that's probably about the right. It's a long time ago now. It's well before Robert was president, certainly. And the Earth, of course, is about a third of the universe. It's 4.5 billion years old. Life itself seemed to emerge. I should probably put on a David Attenborough voice at this point, shouldn't I? Life emerged about 3.8 billion years ago, so quite quickly after the Earth was formed. But complex life took a lot longer to emerge, and I'm going to include humans in that group of complex living forms. We think about 200,000 years ago is when the modern Homo sapiens species sort of really got going as distinct from the other types of human on the planet at the time. And one thing I found fascinating was the idea that how recent human beings are on the planet. If you were to create a 24-hour clock for the age of the Earth, for the 4.5 billion years of the Earth, you'd discover that modern humans didn't arrive on this planet till 10 seconds to midnight, which I think that's amazing, isn't it, really? How little time we've spent on the planet out of that 24-hour clock. So I hope I'm impressing you with my sort of broad sort of picture of things. I'm going to get to happiness in a minute. And then, of course, human beings have been through various revolutions. So 70,000 years ago was what's called the cognitive revolution, when we learned not only about art, but about language and communication. The spoken language, first of all, written language didn't happen until about 10,000 years ago. And then we had another revolution just after the last ice age when we stopped traveling around as hunter-gatherers and settled down as farmers and agricultural workers. So that changed things. If you read this book, actually, it suggests that probably people weren't any happier having settled down to farm. In some ways, their life wasn't quite as good. But that was a big moment when we settled down and we started cultivating animals and plants to eat. And then the next big revolution is all the way up into the 1800s, when York Medical Society was formed, actually, in the Victorian era, the Industrial Revolution, steam and power, and so on. And that revolution has continued, and kind of each new revolution seems to be quicker and quicker. The digital revolution, which started in the 60s, and then the invention or creation of Google in the late 1990s. And then in the past 20 years, in fact, past 5 years, we've probably gone from that to the new revolution, which is the AI and connectivity revolution. So we're getting more and more connected to each other. We have smartphones. We've even got a phobia called nomobophobia now, which is a fear of being out of connection with your mobile phone working. And it affects almost everybody under the age of 25 with extreme anxiety the moment people actually start not being connected to the internet. So we are very much socially connected in a paradoxical way. But the question I've got for you really is, we've gone all this way, but how have things changed in terms of happiness? At one time, we were in the cave paintings of, this is 35,000 years ago, by the way. I hope you like the picture. It's impressive. Those handprints that were left on a cave in southern France have now been replaced in the modern era with the footprint of someone like Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, in the Sea of Tranquility. We landed there in July 1969. I'm just old enough to remember staring at the TV screen and wondering why other people were so interested in it. So we've moved from handprints on caves to footprints on the moon. In fact, we're starting to explore the universe again, aren't we, with the Artemis 2 mission, and we're hoping to land actual people on the moon again by 2028. So all this is a big lead up to say, to answer the question, are we any happier? Has all this technological revolution and advancement and having a more comfortable time made us happier in our lives? I'm asking that as a rhetorical question, by the way, rather than as for you to answer. So let's look at happiness as it is now. The happy life effect. This study here said that good genes are nice, but joy is better. It's said that in the study in Harvard proved that people who were connected to their communities tended to live longer, happier lives. York Medical Society would be one such community. So happier people live longer. They're 35% less likely to die within any 5-year period, even after you adjust for health and age and background. So happiness is definitely good for you in whatever way. But interestingly, it's more important to have strong social connections and friendships and family relationships than it is to have lots of money or even good genes. Of course, we do need other things for a long life, not just happiness. We do need that positive outlook that Robert was talking about. Exercise, you know all this stuff anyway. I don't even tell the absence of stress. How do you do that? Depression, smoking, absence of binge drinking, which is more than 6 units in any one day. So I think we're okay tonight if you're partaking, provided you stop after the third glass. But a sense of meaning and purpose in life is what drives us forwards and gives us a long life. This man's been in the news quite a bit recently, hasn't he? In fact, here's a picture of him. He's spent 100 years on the planet. He's got the most recognizable voices. And he said when he got to about 90 or 95, he might just give it all in and maybe get bored by then, or he'll think it's time to stop. And he's done some of his best work, incredibly, in the past decade in terms of natural history. And I think one thing that drives him is sense of purpose and meaning, as you can see from one of his quotations there. It's really kept him going. And so maybe we can all live to be David Attenboroughs of the future. That figure, by the way, of 0.03% is actually a chance of living to 100 now at this moment in time. Of course, it changes every year. And for the new generation, the chance of reaching your 100th year is probably more like 10 or 15%. So its lifespan is going up. But we can all aspire. I think everyone, there's not a person I know who doesn't like David Attenborough and what he stands for in terms of optimism about the world. So are you an optimistic person? Are you a glass half full or half empty person? And in fact, human beings, despite my job as a psychiatrist for the past 20 years are generally optimistic people rather than pessimists. And that's probably got a survival advantage. If you think good things are going to happen, then you're going to behave in healthy behaviors in those ways as well. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Happiness breeds a healthy lifestyle, and health breeds happiness. And we also know that if you actually are happy, this is the Catholic nun study, you will live 10 years longer and probably earn more money as well, if money is your thing. What's the downside of optimism? Well, I found this quote which said, the trouble with optimists is that they're afraid to face the truth. And it is true that we do greatly underestimate the chance of something bad happening to us. That explains why people don't do these capacity assessments, and they don't complete their wills and get their finances in order, because it's not going to happen to them until it does, of course. It's also a problem, really, if you're actually just continuously optimistic. A lot of my current day job is about cognitive behavior therapy, and telling people just to cheer up and look on the bright side is really an oversimplification that can just make things worse. But you can train yourself to be more positive. So now I've got a tale of two doctors here. I'm trying to make this talk relevant to this particular society. So I want to tell you a story now. We're going to state two gentlemen from the Victorian era. This man here, we're going to call him Tempest. Let's just call him Tempest. He's an eye specialist, and he's a volcanologist. He loves volcanoes. He loves eyes. He's actually the president of the Yorkshire Philosophical Society. And he goes off to Sicily in 1889 to one of his volcanic expeditions to Stromboli, which is the most active volcano in Europe. And he comes back. And tragically, he is in his coach traveling back to York. And he has a coaching accident. The coach is actually held up on the highway by a man called Richard Turpin. And by the way, not all these facts are true, okay? So Richard Turpin holds him up, possibly wrong century, but and the coach drives to a halt, and he's injured. He falls out of the coach. He sustains life-changing injuries to his arm and his leg. He can no longer walk properly without a limp, has a lot of disability, and his handwriting deteriorates significantly, allowing him to continue practicing as a doctor. So that's him. So Tempest, he's got this life-changing accident which has left him with a disability. But we have this other guy here. I don't know if you recognize this one. Did a lot of work on this picture, but no, it's so this man is, let's call him Baldwin, shall we? I'm just thinking of a name. He's a physician at the York Lunatic Asylum, actually. Quite a nice job, and he's a very popular guy. He's well liked by people. He's risen to a lofty position there. He loves this job. And in fact, he's given a stipend by the Queen of 100 guineas a year. So basically, he's won the Victorian lottery. He's now much richer than he used to be, and he's well liked by all his peers as well. So we have Baldwin, the lottery winner, and we have Tempest with a life-changing accident. And I'm trying to measure happiness here and see which one is the happiest. Luckily, there's a local scholar in the area in York at this time, and he's, I don't know, who would you call him? Maybe call him, he's come up from Bart's in London. He's keen on making a career for himself in academia. He's a bit of a thinker, really. So let's call him, I don't know, call him Baron Wright. There's just any name you want. I'm just thinking that might be suitable. And he comes up and he decides, luckily, to measure the life satisfaction of Tempest and Baldwin at time zero, and then 5 years later. And the question is, so 5 years later, who is the happiest? I should say they're both equally happy at the beginning for the purposes of this controlled N of 2 trial. So one's had an accident, one's come into a lot of money. Who's the happiest after 5 years? It's making a serious point here, but all the facts were changed. And that was the only picture I could get of Baron Wright, by the way. It's a very sketchy picture. I did try really hard, but it doesn't, it just has a certain resemblance. I don't know. I feel like he's, so
Baron Wright's the happiest.
He's just got a research paper out of that, really. So he's doing really well, actually. Yeah. So the point of this slide is that both are equally happy 5 years later, that whatever your happiness is, it tends to reset after a period of time. So a lot of money or even disability, whatever happens to you in the short term resets itself after a period of time. So there's something important about happiness there, isn't there, really? Something maybe slightly depressing about it, the fact that it doesn't last forever. And this might be to do with biology. And forgive me, there isn't too much science in this talk, but I have come up with this. This is a really neat little sort of diagram of brain chemicals that make you happy and brain chemicals that make you less happy. And I've managed to put in a couple of words what the brain seems to do with these different chemicals. So we have dopamine for motivation, serotonin for mood, of course, as evidenced by our antidepressants. We have oxytocin, the bonding hormone. When you go to a choir and you sing together, or you're breastfeeding, of course, then bonding and trust is there. And we have endorphins for pleasure and pain relief when you're jogging and other activities like that. And then on the other side, we have stress hormones like cortisol, the hypothalamic hormones, catecholamines, and thyroid as well. So basically, it's not events that make you happy, but chemicals in the brain. That's an interesting way of looking at it, isn't it, really? A bit reductionist, maybe. So the consequence of this is we look at the biology of happiness, and I blame Charles Darwin for this. Indirectly, of course, because he said really constant happiness is impossible. This is the conclusion. Chemicals reward behaviors that we do, and it's the chemicals, not the events, that bring the happiness. So the key thing to do with behaviors is survival and reproduction. So that's the thing that's going to increase your happiness temporarily. But any increase in happiness is just going to last for a short time. And so we came up with this equation, a few people did, genes and life situation plus what you decide to do equals happiness. In fact, you could even draw a diagram there. You've got a certain genetic set point of optimism, personality. You have activities you can do intentionally, and there's your circumstance as well. The good news about this, of course, is that what you do can influence quite a lot of your happiness. Your genes and your circumstances only account for part of it. But if you're feeling good, don't worry, it won't last for long. That's the message I took from this, as I've discovered throughout life, really. But the reverse is also true as well. If you're feeling down, generally speaking, things will improve very shortly afterwards. And at this point, I felt I should put something academic or relevant here. So I was involved I got quite obsessional as a doctor, and I wrote the Royal College of Psychiatrists Obsessional Compulsive Disorder leaflet. So I got involved in this study here of something called Recovering Quality of Life, where lots of very intelligent people got together to work out what are the questions we need to ask to measure happiness? And let's start from zero. Let's not ask the professionals. Let's ask people in mental health services and outside of mental health services. So they put together a list of 1,592 initial questions, and these were reviewed by researchers and teams. And basically, they were tested on various service users in the NHS for happiness and for validity. And eventually, after a lot of research and many years, they got it down to 40 items and then 20 items and then even 10 items. So do you want to see what the 10 questions are to determine your happiness here, really? Now, these are positive and negative items. So this is called the Recovering Quality of Life scale. And I mention it now because it's actually the outcome measure used in this area. It's become acceptable. It's a national outcome measure, but it's also local as well. We're supposed to be using it now, and I'm not sure if we all are. But here are the questions. I found it difficult to get started with everyday tasks. I felt able to trust others. I felt unable to cope. I could do the things I wanted to. I felt happy. I thought my life was not worth living. I enjoyed what I did. I felt hopeful about the future. I felt lonely, and I felt confident in myself. So you'll notice those are positive and negative items. And if you scored over 25, you are happy in the population. And if under 25, I mean, there's a generic problem there. There's also a question about physical health as well. And a meaningful change is about 5 points. So although I didn't initiate this study, it did help me greatly towards my Doctor of Medicine degree, because if you sort of plagiarize from many people, it's called research rather than cheating, isn't it, really? So I was able to get an award of an MD by not just this study, and lots of other people were involved, but recovering quality of life. So it boils down to these sort of questions here, really. Let's talk more about happiness and money now. So as you can see, money can't buy me love. I think that's the Beatles single I've got there. You probably can't read that at this distance. But so money is important, but only up to a point. You probably know this already. Somebody who has £1 million is not twice as happy if he's got £2 million. At least that's not my experience. So it makes you happy up to a point. Now, what is this point at which you get no more additional benefit from the money you earn? And it depends which country you live in, really. But 60,000, 100,000 maybe. It's certainly, I think most of us in this room would have enough money to get by on, I would guess. So it's not the secret to happiness, but it helps a bit. And interestingly, at a population level, you look at different countries around the world, the wealthier countries tend to have more happiness, and the more wealth they get, the happier people get. But that's stronger for poorer countries. So if you start off as a poor country or a poor person, then the first few pounds make a lot of difference compared to the later ones. So I'm not expecting that to be a shock to you, is it really? Maybe your graph's off the edge there, but there is a ceiling effect to money, so we should probably not pursue it at all costs. I've got some interesting things to say about marriage now as well. That's a quote I've just come up with, really. Married people are, I'm told, happier compared to single people. They're at least 30% happier. This is an average, by the way, of course. You may have your own individual experiences. They're physically healthier as well. The problem with this, of course, is it's all confounding factors. Do people who are happier get married more often than people who don't? And there is a honeymoon effect. I think that's meant, no pun intended. I think in the early days of a relationship, it is better. So for those of you that are happy and you're married, then there's probably a correlation there. But men benefit more than women for happiness. The men get a longer life, less cardiovascular disease, less suicide. Women seem to they do benefit, but they benefit more if the spouse does their fair share of the housework. This is a scientific finding. If the relationship is more even, because what they find is they stay off happy, and then dare I say, this is a gender stereotype, which is often true, that the woman in the relationship ends up doing more of the things on her own. So if you help out occasionally, guys, you're going to have a happier relationship. Nevertheless, 79% of men and 75% of women are completely satisfied in their relationship. That's good to know, isn't it, Susan? Yeah. And just in case you were thinking otherwise, divorce doesn't make you happier. If you survey those who were actually in an unhappy marriage, but they decide to stay together and just grit their teeth for the sake of the kids, they report being happily married 5 years later. 2/3 of them do anyway. So divorce doesn't seem to make you happier. I said that to somebody today at lunch accidentally and discovered he was actually divorced. He said, "That's complete rubbish. I'm much happier now." So I don't know how scientific that is. But I didn't realize I was talking about this, that I remembered him getting divorced anyway. The quality of the relationship is still key, of course. We still need shared values, friendship, ability to resolve conflict, because we're still going to argue. And then the final point I've got is about sliding versus deciding. So couples who live together before they get married tend to be less happy after they get married and to be more prone to get divorced as well. So with the one exception that if you get engaged before you live together, then you're less likely to get divorced. So this sounds like a motto for traditional values, doesn't it really? But I assure this is not a political statement today. But let's turn to children then, shall we? So how many children should you have? I know people in the room here today who have more than 2 children, but it does suggest that research is linked to 2 or fewer for your children. But more precisely, if you set out to have the number of children you want at the beginning, then you're happier. So if it includes, if you wanted 0 children, you're happier. 0, 1, and 2. After 2, it gets a bit more dodgy, but it can still, happiness can still be achieved at that point. The important thing is to be in control of your fertility as much as you can. And I'm going to suggest that, and not that I'm obeying this, 2 would be a good number. But do get married, do have children, and don't get divorced. I can't really change that for you at this point in your life, really, to increase your happiness. Happiness and social media. On a slightly more serious topic, I looked up something called the World Happiness Report. There is such a thing, with an executive summary, and it came up with these conclusions here. Young people, teenagers in Europe and the USA, are much less happier than they were 15 years ago, since 2005. We do also discover that teens are using social media a lot more, and people who use it for a lot of hours a day, over 7 hours a day, have much lower well-being than those who use it for just 1 hour a day or less. And that difference is starker for girls than boys, so teenage girls especially. We can argue about whether this is cause or effect, And quite a lot of people, as you evidenced by the ban in Australia on social media, which we're seeing how that goes, think there's a connection between the two. However, when you look at the rest of the world, which has just as much increase in social media use like South America and Africa and Asia, there isn't that drop in well-being and happiness. So it seems just in the Western world, in Europe and America. I just leave those facts with you, not to draw a link between them, but a lot of people are questioning the wisdom of social media, including, interestingly, people who use it a lot themselves. But we'll still keep posting occasional talks from the Medical Society there. Happiness and physical health. Better health is strongly linked to positivity, life satisfaction, and a sense of purpose. And we get all these parameters here: less colds, lower blood pressure, a longer life, and lower cortisol. But interestingly, if you become disabled, like our man Tempest did in that coaching accident, which I made up, by the way, in case you were wondering earlier on, can live a useful life with disability with actually similar happiness and life satisfaction. The only exception to that would be if there was chronic pain. Chronic pain can be a factor in reduced life satisfaction. So we can live happily together, even with physical illness. Mental health wise, I'm quoting my own research here, aren't I, really? Which is the danger of getting boring is to show some facts that you think are very important that other people don't. But I'm just going to, two facts I've got here was that people with psychosis rate their lives as happier than people who don't have a psychosis. That's interesting, isn't it? This is a study of people in Selby, where John and I work together, and it's the Q's project, and there was and it wasn't just that study; it's been duplicated. So severe mental illness is not necessarily going to reduce your life satisfaction. I invited that, didn't I? Really, but and satisfaction in a person's life correlates with satisfaction with psychiatric services. So maybe you can't always influence your survey results. If somebody's got a happy life, they're going to be happy with you as a doctor or nurse. I haven't got too many slides left, and I thought I could show this slide at this point in time now. So life events can influence happiness, but I think John's got his medication, but I want some of this one. I think 1,000 milligrams is quite a high dose, isn't it? That should be, it's enough for me, really. And sometimes I feel that's what I need. But I can promise you that medication isn't the answer to all problems, just by having done that as the day job for quite a lot of years, really. So if you want to get private prescription for this, by the way, I'm available afterwards. I can certainly increase your happiness quite considerably. So I have to mention CBT because for some strange reason, I seem to have become a psychotherapist in the twilight of my career. And cognitive behavior therapy is about looking at the world in a different way, trying to change your thoughts and change the way you behave in order to feel better. That's what CBT is. So as you look at this diagram here, tell me, what can you see? Two faces. Three faces. Yeah, yes. I think Bob's read the book. No, it's yeah. Well, so there are three faces here. You're going to say, "Where's the third face?" Yeah. So it's a light bulb moment. So that's what CBT is. Oh yes, if I reacted to this situation in this way. So as you look at that, there's a man. Mustache there. He's facing this way. Sorry, on Zoom there, you can't see me. He's facing this way. But facing the other way, we've got a young lady. And we've got an old lady, and the old lady has that's her. That's the eye of the young lady, the nose and the chin. The older lady, that's her eyes, that's her nose, and that's the mouth there. So she's kind of looking further down. So this optical illusion has no value whatsoever, but I thought I'd put it up for entertainment purposes today, just to illustrate the fact that CBT isn't a new thing. The Greeks and the Romans invented it, not Beck, for those of you who know psychiatry. So people are disturbed not by events, but by the view they take of them. That's what Epictetus said. You saw a picture of him earlier on in his happiness talk. And Marcus Aurelius, a Roman philosopher and emperor, in fact, said our life is what our thoughts make it. Isn't that wonderful? We can change the world just by changing our thoughts, if only it was that simple. But expectations do count for quite a lot. So I've only got a couple of slides left now. So I resist the temptation to go for pop psychology here, because here's an example on the left side. Some of those things are probably very good. I must confess I've never meditated at sunrise, but maybe I should start. and I will be repeating positive words to myself as time goes on here. So I'm going to leave you with those. If you want to see the full slide set, I'm going to make it available afterwards. The most important thing is to be true to yourself. That will bring true happiness. I've actually inserted some words down there, so it looks skillfully like it's part of the cartoon, but it wasn't. But I think this would appeal to the psychotherapists among you. So I've already shown you these slides before, haven't I, really? Because that means I'm coming to the end, but I thought I shouldn't be getting, for all these reasons, happiness can be a good reason for joining York Medical Society, really. I'm going to wait for the last three to come up because I think they're probably the funniest parts of this slide here, really. All based on opinion-based fact rather than evidence. Still true to this day. So happiness and meaning is spread through the articles. I won't go through that again, but we're spreading happiness by giving purpose and meaning. And we have these magic ingredients: membership, academic program, social program, dedicated staff, a beautiful building, finances in order, awards and altruism and charity, and just staying up to date. So I thought I'd change the title of this slide as we went through to happiness and York Medical Society. So finally, how to get more happiness? Okay, this is it. This is the one you've been waiting for. First of all, be born an optimist if you can manage that, or at least get a referral for CBT if you can find one person who can do it. Have enough money, but you don't need too much. Be sociable. You're doing that tonight, of course. Develop strong social relationships and bonds and connections. I don't think any of that is earth-shattering. Probably limit social media use. I think I'm under 1 hour a day. Susan had to show me how to share something on Facebook. I've not been sharing it for about the past 3 years. Anyway, so limit social media use. Look after your body, regular exercise and diet and so on. The things that you really do already or know about as doctors. Have a healthy mind. Be grateful for what you have. Treat depression, I should say that, and maintain your serotonin levels. Find meaning and purpose in life, in the little things towards the big things. Maybe adopt that Buddhist philosophy about trying not to seek pleasures and the next goal in your life. Play happy music. Apparently, if music is in a major key and it's between 140 and 150 beats a minute, then that's going to be the happiest, uplifting music. So if you like ABBA's Dancing Queen or Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, then sorry, Bob, that's not quite your taste, is it really? Probably Dark Side of the Moon. So play happy music. Get married if you feel the urge to, but don't stop communicating carefully. Probably have some children. 0, 1 or 2 is a good number. Move to Scandinavia because Scandinavia has the happiest, for some strange reason. 4 countries out of the 10 are Scandinavian or Icelandic. And finally, of course, I'm going to say this, aren't I? Join New York Medical Society. It was going to be in there. So that's my recipe for happiness. Try and find it not by seeking more, but appreciating what you have already. That's probably, I'm going to hope that when I go to the next slide, it's, yes. So this lady was called Jean Calmer, and she lived to be 122 years, 9 months. She's the oldest person on record. So David Attenborough is a youngster by comparison. And this is a photograph of her when she was 120. She died in 1997 in France. And one of her quotations was, "Always keep your smile. That's how I explain my long life." And maybe she had a sense of humor or a sense of proportion, but other people have not come close to her yet. And she did give up smoking when she was 116. So got those extra years in there. So I'm going to say thank you very much for allowing me to be your president for a year and hopefully for spreading a little happiness amongst ourselves. So thank you. We've almost come to the end, but not quite. But that's the end of the happiness talk.